child's learning session for preschool education system. And today we have taken up a very interesting topic for teachers as well as for parents. And this topic is Bloom's taxonomy and its application in preschool education system. It has been said that when we work for a child's growth and development, first 6 years of child's life is very crucial, and that's why it is called as the foundation or formative years. But due to various understanding constraints, we as parents as well as teachers miss out various technical issues while we try to work with our children to develop their overall skill. And in those aspects, Bloom's taxonomy is very important. And if we are attached to any child's skill development, it is very important for us to understand what Bloom's taxonomy is and its application in preschool education system. Now, all of us who are connected to the skill development of children in early years, we are aware that 90% of the child's brain has already been developed by the time child is reaching the age of 5. And various methods of early child development, they also affirms that each child is equivalent to a person. That means when a child behaves, when a child exposes different things around him or her, then the child behaves exactly the similar way, the way an adult behaves. So from that perspective, we say that 90% of the child's brain has developed, and another 10% brain development happens post the age of 5 years. Now that's the reason this 0 to 5 years is known as high sensitivity period. And what does this high sensitive mean? Now, sensitivity is all about the ability to grasp a particular skill when the child is growing. So now, if we say that higher the sensitivity, that means higher the probability the child will learn a particular skill. Lesser the sensitivity, meaning the lesser the chance that the child will grasp a particular skill. Now, if you look to this graph which is visible on your screen, you will be able to identify one thing, that the moment the child is growing, the sensitivity increases gradually for many skills like numbers, social skills, symbol, all these things grows gradually. But however, there are various skills like language, there are various skills like habitual way of behavior. They are itself very high when the child is born. Now, the moment child is born, the child is ready to learn. Now, when the sensitivity or the probability of learning is very high, then it becomes easy if we adopt one mechanism, one technique for the child to adopt those skills. Therefore, it is very important in the preschool years. If that technique can be adopted, child's growth can be formalized. If you look in this graph, post 5 years, if you look many of the skills, the sensitivity becomes very low. And few skills like emotional control, like habitual way of responding, and a few skills like vision, hearing, all these things becomes almost zero sensitivity by the child is reaching 7 years. So if we want to develop, the first 5 years are the golden period for the child to understand and grasp everything. So this phenomena or this awareness is available to most of the teachers and parents. But if we look to the overall cognitive skill development of the child, then various research that has been done across India that show that more than 40% children they lack the required development in their cognitive skill, meaning they are very, very slow in their cognitive skill. One example I can tell you right away, the, the survey done by Indian Education Society, they found that more than 85% children they are not able to identify a given number between 0 to 99. So this is one of the example of slow cognitive skill development among children. And this is more than 40% children, whatever minimum requirement, they do not achieve. Now question comes, what are the reasons that most of the children, they do not achieve the required cognitive skill development in their early childhood development? Basically, there are two reasons. Number one reason is that we lack proper curriculum in the preschool education system. When we talk about curriculum, I always mean there is a structured way of skill building approach in the preschool system. If systematic approach is not there, it is not a proper curriculum, and that is bound to lead slow development, not only cognitive skill, but also other literacy and other skills. Second reason, we lack proper techniques, proper methodology for teachers in the preschools. Now, once curriculum is not available, we are just committing a lot of problem, lot of issues. Second is that when our teachers are not provided with lots of technique, then they will also be facing lot of difficulties, lot of challenge in bringing the desired skill development among the children. So these are basically the two reasons where we can manage 80% of the problem that currently we are facing regarding the slow cognitive skill development among children. Now, as far as the technique is concerned, one technique I'll discuss right away, which is our theme of today's uh, session. They are the cognitive development, and one technique is called Bloom's taxonomy. Bloom's taxonomy is one of the very, very powerful technique which provides one mechanism, one structure of skill development among children in a very, very methodological way. Now let's understand what Bloom's taxonomy talks about. Bloom's taxonomy gives a structured way of 6 stages of cognitive skill development among human beings. Now, when we talk about structured and gradual process of skill development, we need to understand there are basic skill development, which is easy for the child to grasp. There are difficult level of skill development. And how to manage all the difficulty level of cognitive skill development among the child is answered by Bloom's taxonomy. Let's understand that. First level of Bloom's taxonomy talks, remembering is the first and rudimental way of cognitive skill development in the child. Remembering or memorizing is the basic skill that a child must have before we think about anything. Remembering could be anything, remembering the name, remembering a rhyme, remembering numbers, remembering a story. Whatever you talk, remembering is the first level of skill development. We must understand that as preschool teachers, that memorization, remembering is the first level. Now, when we talk about the second level, it's all about understanding. When remembering is not equal to understanding, understanding is going one step further, getting inside of that thing what we have already remembered. For example, I remember that this, this, you know, rose is red. That is, I remember. But if I do not understand how a rose looks like, then this remembering is not of any use. So understanding brings little bit more aspects into the thing what we have already remembered. Now, one thing we must remember here, that without remembering, understanding doesn't work. So understanding will work at its best if remembering or memorization is good. Third one is the interpretation. Now, why we are talking about interpretation? When we remember, when we understand something, we start interpreting those things. Means, okay, rose means automatically something comes my mind is that it's red, it's good in smell. Uh, so a lot of thing comes into mind. So different people interpret differently. So the amount of understanding will lead to the amount of interpretation. So in that connotation, if understanding is better, interpretation is better. If understanding is poor, interpretation will be poor. So overall development depends on the remembering, understanding, and at the third phase, it is interpretation. And once interpretation is done, then one more stage of application into practical life will come. We learn things because we want to apply them in the practical life to make our life better. Whether it's any skill, any education, whatever, if it is not applied into something, then it doesn't have any meaning. So application comes at the fourth stage of the skill development or the overall brain development or cognitive development of the child. This is the fourth level. Fifth level, what we call is the evaluation. Now, when we understand, when we learn so many things, we memorize so many things, our understanding interlinks one another, our interpretation also linked to one another. Then when a lot of things, we start synthesization. We try to connect one to another to make a better meaning, make a better evaluation of the whole thing. So now when, for example, when we see that this rose is red, now can I make possible if the rose can be black, then what happens? So this is the evaluation. This rose is small. What will happen if the rose will be little bigger? So these kind of evaluation things will come into mind at the fifth stage of the skill development or overall cognitive development. And finally, the last stage of Bloom's taxonomy talks about creation. When we talk about innovation, we talk about creating new thoughts, new ways, then it is the highest level of cognitive growth or overall development in the skill or the process in the child's mind, that the child will be able to create things, innovate things. And innovation is possible if we make sure the child is good enough in remembering, understanding, interpretation, applying and analyzing things, evaluation and synthesization, then only creation will happen. Creation doesn't happen just like that. So Bloom's taxonomy is a fantastic technique. I'm sure that you must be understanding what I'm just trying to talk about Bloom's taxonomy. And if you want to know more, we have regular sessions, we have training sessions where we have a complete module on Bloom's taxonomy that we can, discuss in details about each of these stages, uh, how it can be applied. Now, after understanding, let's go to our preschool years. Now, why we are having this session is that to understand Bloom's taxonomy, we have understood. Now, for each of these stages, if we can understand few techniques for the preschools, then we can provide a lot of support to our teachers who have been engaged in this skill development among children in the preschool. Let's go to these techniques. Now, first one is remembering. When we talk about remembering, the technique that can be applied in preschool is recitation. So when the child comes to school in the preschool setup, teachers has to do only one thing: let the child remember, memorize any damn thing that we are just trying to tell. Sometimes it is also called as rote learning, R-O-T-E, rote learning. Rote learning is a very, very powerful technique in the preschool years because it prioritizes the memorization as one of the technique for the child to have it. Why we say that? Because memorization, as we know, is the very basic stage of skill development or cognitive growth among children. It is very easy for the teachers to adopt this skill. So whether it's a rhyme, whether it's 1, 2, 3, 4, whether it is English uh, letters in English alphabet or local letters in regional alphabet, whatever it is, let the child remember it, recite it, until unless the child adopts, child is comfortable in reciting any poem, any number, any letter, anything, keep doing that, keep doing that. The moment you achieve this recitation or memorization of the child for a particular thing that we are just trying, then believe me, you have won 50% of the battle of developing the skill of the child. It's very easy. Sometimes we as teachers, what we do not have patience to spend time with a child to know that if the child is able to remember and recite them. Because recitation ensure the child remembers. Sometimes you must have seen in the preschool, if you ask a child to recite numbers, then some of the children, they will be reciting numbers just like that, 1, 2, 3, 7, 9, 11. They miss out some of the numbers in between. What does that mean? That means their cognitive development or their overall brain development is missing out something. Now, how can we just correct them? Ensure that along with the child, makes your child remembers and recite again and again and again and again. So that is the very, very easy technique. You have to follow this. If it is rhyme, until unless each and every children in your class is able to complete a rhyme, then you don't shift to the second rhyme. So once you do that, you have at least ensured that each and every child has gone through that first level of skill development. So this is fantastic. This is a very small thing, and you know that's rote learning. That is basic step you are adopting, and you are ensuring the child under your guidance is getting that skill. So so far so good. Let's go to the second part. Once the recitation is done, this technique is fantastic. Second, to ensure understanding, the technique we can use is the identification, or the technique you can use as show and tell. Anything you talk to the children in this stage, you have to make sure you are showing that object and talking about that object. If you are talking about apple, A for apple, either carry one real apple, that's fantastic. If that is not available, then bring one toy apple. If that is not available, bring a flashcard of a apple picture, or the book where the apple picture is printed as their syllabus book. Open that page and show them. It's do not ever go to class without having a prep of that object you are going to talk. So that improves the understanding level of the child. And definitely this has to be done after ensuring the memorization and remembering. So simple technique you have to remember, show and tell. It's very, very easy technique for the teachers and nothing difficult in that. Only as a practice, uh, as a part of our daily routine, we have to carry all those preps with us where we have to talk about that object to the children. So this is very, very easy technique. Now go to the third one, interpretation. Now, when we are talking about interpretation at Adivaret, we adopt a technique which is called as 1, 2, 3, 4 technique. Now, what is 1, 2, 3, 4 technique? Now, we keep on adding various things to the children in the preschool years when the child moves from toddlers to nursery, nursery to KG1 and KG2. And in the process, we keep on doing the same thing actually. If A for apple, B for ball, all these things, the sometimes child keeps learning until the child is 4, 5 years of age in the KG1 as well as KG2. Now, when we talk about show and tell, 1, 2, 3, 4 technique is that make sure you have a very structured information about that particular subject as 1, 2, 3, 4. One is the first information about the object. For example, you are talking about apple. First information is red. Apple is red. So this becomes your first. When you talk about apple, this is apple. Apple is red. So you introduced one only. So make sure the child understand, interprets it. Apple is red. If you are talking about a kite, show that kite and say that it is made of paper. So first information is one. Whatever information, it has to be very, very structured. Now, once you are comfortable with that, you bring the second information. Second information, for example, you are talking about apple. Second information could be apple is sweet. Now, when you just do talk about that apple, this is apple. Apple is red. Apple is very sweet. Now, what you are just doing here, you are adding the information about that object. At the same time, you keep adding in a structured way. Now, what's happening in the mind of the child? Child grasps that because child is level of understanding is already been done. Now you are interpreting how the child will be interpret. As a teacher, you have to bring them into the class as a technique. Now, if you just mix and match, then when the child's brain is growing in a very, very structured way, then you are making a lot of confusion. Child's brain will also get confused. Now, the more the structured your approach is, the more the structured a child's mind will grow. So bring that 1, 2, 3, 4 technique. Then third technique about apple, you bring that apple is available in the fruit store. Now you are introducing the third level of information. So one level of interpretation is gone off. Now when you are talking, the apple is red, apple is sweet, apple is available in the fruit store. Now, when you are adopting, then we have already got a lot of technique that we are already introducing in our training. When we'll be using the number of information about that product, about that object that we are talking, that will be depending on the age of the child's. How many things the child can remember, how many things child can interpret. So accordingly, you can just add all these things. It's a very, very easy technique. 1, 2, 3, 4. Follow the process. And once the children are comfortable, understand, interpret, remember, then you keep adding the 5, 6, 7, 8 level of information. Then after that, you leave it, child will automatically, the moment child will understand, see all these things, the interpretation will be coming in that way. So this is a fantastic technique. Interpretation technique, remember, ID variates 1, 2, 3, 4 technique. Then let's go to the next one, analyzing and applying. Now here what happens, the child moves one step further to adopt the skill, whatever the child has learned, applying into daily life. And that is the crux of skill building. If we are not able to make it practical use, there is no way that we need to have education system. So to analyze it, applying it, here you start the why technique. Introduced why. Once the child is comfortable in the three stages, you adopt why. Without understanding, without interpretation, if we are applying why, child will be confused because child is not able to interpret them. Child is not having enough information about the product or about that object we are talking about. How the child will be talking about why if you introduced it earlier? For example, if you are talking about the apple is red. Now, at this stage, child may ask why apple is red. But if before we introduced why apple is red, then there may be confusion. Why apple is sweet? Child may be introduced at that level. That's why this level maybe we need to have at the little higher age when the child is completing KG1, introducing or getting into KG2 or senior kindergarten. Simply anything that we are just doing interpretation, everything we simply ask why. Basically, you adopt it at the UKG level or senior kindergarten level, because by this time, all these remembering, understanding, and interpretation skills are well groomed. So child will be ready to adopt the fourth technique or fourth level of cognitive growth, which is analyzing and applying the knowledge into something. And that will be possible if the child will understand why this. We call at Adivharet, we call it as why technique. So anything you ask the child to remember, if the child is not asking why, you ask why. So the moment you ask why, child will be answering it. If child is not able to answer, you as a teacher, you have to answer it. So this becomes a very, very easy technique for the teacher. Always keep why. So that's one, two, three, four. Our remembering, we have recitation technique. We have second level of Bloom's taxonomy is understanding. Here we have the show and tell technique. Third is interpreting. Here we use 1, 2, 3, 4 technique. Keep adding new information about the object. Fourth level is analyzing and applying. We introduce here is the why technique. So these are very, very easy techniques for the teachers, and teachers can have it very, very nicely in the class. And for synthesization, evaluation, and creating additional techniques will follow. At this point of time, we are not introducing any technique for your understanding. If you have to go through these details of the technique, details of the training, then please get in touch with Adivharet team. Adivharet will be happy to uh, engage experts to have a proper training on various techniques to ensure the application of Bloom's taxonomy in preschools. Now, considering that cognitive skill development is a gradual process, we cannot bring that why technique when the child is in nursery or in the toddler group. It has to be introduced in right time when the child is comfortable in remembering and understanding things and interpreting things with maximum level of information about that particular thing. So another best way to do all these things is that functional games and activities that at IDVariety we have been talking about that again and again for the development of the thing. So as I said, when the child grows from toddler to uh, nursery class, from nursery class to LKG or lower kindergarten, from lower kindergarten to upper kindergarten, then what we need to do is that level of exposure to various functional games and activities will change. Now, if you adopt one functional game for the purpose of understanding, the functional game will be different. If the functional game is created for the interpretation or analyzing, then that functional game objective will be different. But this is very, very important. I'm sure that understanding this Bloom's taxonomy will help you much in designing your course plan, in designing your play, in designing your weekly teaching plans, lot of things. And most important is your structured way of bringing this technique and tools in the classroom. So that is very, very important. So thank you so much for your patient hearing. And I'm sure today's session will be useful in a great way to you while you will be defining your plans for the skill development of the children in preschool years. If you have any specific query, you are most welcome to get back to us. And the details of the contact number and the email ID is here. You can write to us, you can call us, and we'll be there to support you. Thank you so much.